It rains in London as if the sky wants to teach the city to breathe slowly. The water streams down the windows of the small apartment in Notting Hill and turns everything into a silent film. It is a short dawn, and the street smells of wet earth and freshly baked bread coming from the corner bakery. Scarlett rests her forehead against the cold window and smiles to herself, like someone guarding a secret she cannot even name. She is 22, American, with red hair that insists on falling over her green eyes, an energy that never asks for permission to enter. She wears a large university sweatshirt, mismatched socks, and carries in her body the sweet recklessness of someone who still believes the world is malleable. Behind her, on the sofa, Amelia sleeps curled up under a checkered blanket, also 22, British, fair skin, blonde hair held up with a graphite pencil, a calm like a still lake, the type of person who organizes the salt and sugar by size and yet still sees poetry in the edges of a teacup. The kettle whistles like a small alarm of routine. Scarlett turns off the stove, breathes in the steam from the chamomile tea, and walks across the wooden floor that creaked on certain planks. The apartment has plants in glass jars, photos held by clothespins, books resting directly on the floor, everything with the affectionate disorder of someone who is building a place in the world. She hears the lock turn. It is subtle, but enough to set the rhythm of her heart. The door opens on a breath of rain and woody perfume. Victoria enters. 24, British, tall posture, precise features, brown eyes that always seem to be measuring distances. Her dark brown hair is tied in a bun that defies the bad weather. The wool coat embraces a contained elegance that does not ask for attention but receives it. She closes the door carefully, as if not wanting to wake anyone, and adjusts an envelope inside her bag. "I brought the book Amelia asked for," she says, quietly, with that accent that rounds the words and leaves them warmed. "She's sleeping," replies Scarlett, matching the tone, like someone feeling their way through a dark room. "I can give it to her." Victoria observes the room as if she needs to relearn how to be there. The yellow light from the lamp draws a soft frame on her face. There is nothing extraordinary about the scene, and yet, Scarlett feels the world readjusting, the way the air changes when a window is opened by mistake. She notices details she shouldn't, a raindrop clinging stubbornly to the tip of her bangs, the subtle crease at the corner of her mouth, the breathing that adjusts to the silence. The smell of wet street mixes with that of the tea and creates an invisible bridge between the two. "Do you want a mug?" asks Scarlett, offering the warmth she holds in her hands. "Thank you." Victoria sets down her bag, takes off her coat, and underneath wears a simple, impeccable gray sweater. "Just a little." They approach the open-plan kitchen as if reciting a text from memory. Scarlett pours the tea, hands over the mug, and their fingers accidentally brush. It is not a touch that changes history, it is just the edge of a map. Still, something ignites in a quiet corner of the body, that kind of brightness that precedes the dawn. The rain outside gains cadence, and the wall clock marks an impossible hour for conversation, but time, there, is something else. "London decides who we are, sometimes," says Scarlett, not knowing where she got the phrase from. "London asks us to choose," corrects Victoria, with a minimal smile. "And asks us again when we change our minds." The reply hangs in the air, taut like a violin string. Scarlett feels like laughing, like saying something light, but she chooses silence. She watches Victoria bring the mug to her mouth, her eyes half closed from the heat, the line of her neck that disappears into the sweater's collar. She tries not to think about what it would be like to touch there. She doesn't think. She only imagines. And imagination is a match that lights slowly. Amelia stirs on the sofa and murmurs her sister's name in her sleep. Victoria lowers her eyes, softens, and for a second the rigidity gives way to a gesture of someone who knows the weight of protecting another. Scarlett sees in that crack the woman behind the posture, someone who measures words so as not to hurt, who avoids promises because fulfilling them is a responsibility she does not delegate. And she feels, without fully understanding why, that this is what attracts her, the discipline facing the storm, the control trembling a millimeter under the touch of the everyday. The conversation begins to walk in short steps. They talk about work, about timid plans, about how the streets of Notting Hill seem like forgotten love letters. Victoria comments on a case from the office, something about contracts, deadlines, hurried people. Her voice has a music that Scarlett recognizes without having learned it, the clarity of someone who decides, the softness of someone who cares. She doesn't want to interrupt, she wants to memorize. Amelia's room breathes deeply, the city yawns, a taxi passes by projecting liquid shadows on the wall. "You always show up when it rains," teases Scarlett, laughing softly. "I show up when I'm needed." Victoria lets it slip, and her gaze, for an instant, rests on Scarlett's as if testing the water's temperature. Everything that comes after is cotton. The sentences lose their edges, the gestures gain body. Scarlett rests her mug in the sink and dries her hands on the cloth apron with lemon prints, a gift from a street market that Amelia insisted on buying. The texture of the fabric, rough at the edges, awakens a new awareness of skin. There is a different gravity in the room, as if the center of the house had moved and now resided in the space between Victoria's shoulder and Scarlett's arm, a gap that seems to ask for crossing. No one moves. And everything moves. The wind scratches the facade, the building answers with a discreet crack. From somewhere distant comes the siren of an ambulance, and the city, impartial, continues what it was doing. Scarlett notices her own accelerated pulse and tries to normalize her breathing, but each intake of air collects the woody perfume of Victoria and returns a fragment of a memory she hasn't lived yet. It is not desire that advances, it is recognition. As if the body remembered first and only then told the heart. "I liked the rain when I was little," Victoria says, almost to herself, watching the fat drops sliding down the glass. "I thought it washed away wrong decisions. And now I try to decide before it rains." Scarlett smiles. It's impossible not to notice the irony, the two of them, sheltered under the same roof, having to choose words like someone choosing stones to cross a river. She shortens the step. Just enough for the distance to translate into a delicate warmth in the air. It is not invasive. It is an invitation. Victoria notices and does not retreat. The tension is not a knife, it is a thread. Stretched, vibrating, tuning their ears for any new noise. Amelia turns on her side and goes silent again, as if the apartment had made a confidentiality agreement with fate. Scarlett notices Victoria's hands. They are hands that work, that sign, that hold the world with long, sure fingers. A discreet vein runs along the back of her hand, night blue. The impulse to touch arises like the memory of an old song. She doesn't touch. Not yet. Her whole body learns a new grammar, looking is almost touching, breathing is almost confessing. At the same time, there is something sacred in the restraint, a promise that the most beautiful hunger is the one that knows how to wait. "I shouldn't have come so late," Victoria ponders, but stays. "Sometimes, what we shouldn't do is precisely what needs to happen," replies Scarlett, and immediately feels the weight of her own audacity. "I mean, the tea, the delivery of the book. I feel like everything arrived at the right time." Victoria laughs, low, a laugh that chases away the fog for a second. Her pupil dilates in an imperceptible reflex and her face softens in the outline of the lamplight. The words they exchange now have another layer, what they say, what they hide, what they confess without knowing. The entire apartment seems to lean in the direction of possibility. The rain lessens in intensity, turns to drizzle, and each drop sounds like a suspension point. Scarlett approaches the sofa where Amelia sleeps, adjusts the blanket carefully, and, raising her eyes, finds Victoria watching the gesture. There is no judgment, only a silent gleam. That look says that someone is truly seeing her, with her flaws, her haste, her confusions. It is a rare recognition. And that is exactly what scares her in a good way. Her chest feels light and heavy at the same time, like someone climbing a fire escape not knowing if they will open the roof door or return to the hallway. "Thank you for the book," whispers Scarlett, as if thanking for something else. "You're welcome," says Victoria, and the way the two words come out carries the delicacy of a sealed letter. The clock marks 2:13. The candor of the moment asks for an ending, but the story, stubborn, prefers the cliffhangers. Scarlett takes half a step towards the kitchen, and Victoria picks up her coat from the chair. The fabric slides, making a soft noise. Raising their eyes, they meet in the middle of the path. There is a line there, drawn in the air, the line between what is no longer just friendship and what is not yet a confession. Scarlett's heart beats like a train entering a tunnel, and she knows that, after that night, the city will continue to reign inside. "Good night, Scarlett," Victoria says, in a tone that seems to hold a request that was not made. Scarlett rehearses the answer, but her voice dissolves in her mouth. She nods, breathes slowly, and it is only at that moment that she notices a raindrop still hanging from the tip of Victoria's hair, about to fall. The droplet slips. Falls. And the silence between them remains suspended, whole, like a bridge that someone needs to cross with the first step. The rain decided to stay for another day, a thin curtain that left London smelling of old stone and tea. Early in the morning, Scarlett went down to get bread and came back with cold hands and a basket full of croissants that Amelia insisted on warming in the oven. Victoria arrived minutes later, bringing the newspaper folded with precision and a black umbrella still dripping, which she opened and closed in the doorframe as if asking the weather for permission. The room filled with steam and a low murmur of voices. Amelia talked about a plan for the weekend, about visiting Portobello Road, and Scarlett nodded, but her awareness was stuck on Victoria's minimal gestures, the way she set the newspaper on the table, her index finger running over the headlines, the gentle line of her neck when she tilted her head to listen. "These pastries remind me of Paris," said Victoria, blowing on the heat before taking a bite. "Paris knows how to sell itself better, but London always delivers," retorted Scarlett, out of the corner of her mouth. "London delivers what it promises," she replied, and there was a contained brightness there, a hint of provocation that ended before turning into wind. Amelia distributed mugs of coffee, and for a moment the three formed a small republic of mornings, crumbs, timid laughter, the sounds of cutlery against plates. Scarlett, however, felt her body like the tuning of an instrument, every nerve attentive, as if the entire room was waiting for a note that did not come. When Amelia got up to answer the phone, the room grew larger. The window reflected images, and the noise of the street came in waves. Scarlett reached out to get the jam jar at the same time as Victoria, and the tips of their fingers met. It wasn't a shock or a stumble, it was just a brief and precise encounter, enough for the body to register temperature and intention. A new memory was born there, silent. "Sorry," said Victoria, withdrawing her hand, but not her eyes. "It's nothing," replied Scarlett, quietly, like someone who learns a word in another language and repeats it only to themselves. The afternoon brought the promise of the antiques market. Amelia loved bargaining with men in berets and women with floral gloves. She dragged the two through the colorful alleys. Scarlett followed half a step behind Victoria, and the world reduced to an exercise in attention, the sound of thin bracelets when she moved her hair, the outline of the navy blue coat defining her waist, the distracted elegance with which she checked price tags. They stopped at a vinyl stall. Victoria took an Ella Fitzgerald record out of its plastic sleeve and smiled in a rare way, almost childlike. "Do you like her?" asked Scarlett. "I like the honesty in her voice. No shortcuts. No shortcuts," she repeated, as if storing that away in an inner pocket. Amelia found an analog camera and disappeared down a side gallery, asking them to wait. The narrow corridor, supported by exposed bricks, brought the two into a cold and intimate shadow. Scarlett leaned her shoulders against the wall and, for a few seconds, let the silence work. The smell of used books and old leather anchored the scene in time. Victoria turned to face her, the vinyl still in her hands, and the distance between them became the measure of a breath. "Sometimes, I think you speak like someone opening doors," said Victoria, without irony. "And you live like someone who keeps them closed," returned Scarlett, gently. "Perhaps for fear of a draft." The reply hung between them, breathing. Scarlett's heart took a step ahead of her body and stopped at the edge of a precipice that didn't frighten, only called. The light in the corridor drew a warm glow on Victoria's face, who averted her eyes for a moment as if looking at her own doubt. Amelia reappeared with victory in her smile and popped the bubble, naturally. They talked about dinner, about an old movie, and the afternoon resumed the march of the world that does not suspect the caves it has opened. At night, in the apartment, a power outage blacked out half the block. Amelia lit candles with the dexterity of someone who always knows where she keeps the matches. The room turned golden, and each flame combed a piece of memory. Scarlett put the Ella record on the battery-operated record player and the contralto filled the gaps. Victoria took off her shoes and stood barefoot on the rug, a small surrender to comfort. She seemed less armed, less made of lines and angles. Amelia went to get blankets and pillows for an improvised movie session, and the two were left alone for a moment by the window breathing rain. "What do you do when the power goes out?" asked Scarlett, feigning casualness. "You learn to see in the dark," Victoria smiled briefly. "And try not to trip over what you won't admit exists." Scarlett wanted to say that the dark, sometimes, reveals shapes better, but she remained silent. Instead, she handed over a cup of hot chocolate, which they had prepared without rush. Their fingers touched again. Warm now. A simple touch, and yet, the body interpreted it as if it were news. The sound of the record scratched slightly, Victoria raised her chin, and Scarlett perceived the exact height at which their worlds could align. They decided not to align. The power came back on, and the white beam from the ceiling reclaimed the space as if in a hurry to return reality to its place. The following days drew a game of approach and retreat. On Sunday, the three went to the museum. Amelia snapped pictures with happy steps, while Scarlett and Victoria stopped at the figurative paintings, where hands almost touched without touching. Scarlett realized what enchanted her: the courage in the gaze of the figures, the suspended gesture, the promise. Victoria commented on something about composition, about how certain painters mastered the empty spaces more than the objects. "It's in the empty spaces that we breathe," she said, and Scarlett filed the phrase away next to "no shortcuts." On Tuesday, they cooked together. Amelia took care of the dough, and Scarlett was in charge of the tomatoes and basil. Victoria chopped garlic with clinical precision, and the sweet smell took over the kitchen. They talked about movies, about songs that save bad days, about small fears no one admits out loud. The sink sponge slipped, water splashed onto Victoria's wrist, and Scarlett, without thinking, reached for a dish towel and held her hand to dry it. The touch lasted half a second longer than would be normal. It was enough for both to know. Amelia turned around, and Scarlett let go. A collective laugh came to the rescue: light, careless, life, generous, invented a subject. At the end of the night, Amelia said goodbye with a kiss on her sister's cheek and went up to her room with a yawn. The house grew quiet. Victoria cleared the plates with Scarlett. The sound of porcelain against porcelain became a kind of music. When their hands crossed again, no object served as an excuse. They stayed like that, for a second, at the short distance a lightning bolt takes to decide if it will touch the ground. Scarlett's heart tightened, not from pain, but from vastness. "I don't want to hurt anyone," Victoria said, as if apologizing for a road not yet traveled. "Neither do I," replied Scarlett. "But I don't want to lie about what I feel. Even if I don't know its name." The honesty opened an internal window. The new air made both shudder with a freshness that wasn't cold. The conversation moved through soft territories: childhood, first falls, small victories that no one sees. Scarlett told of the day she learned to ride a bike on a wide street in Arizona, Victoria spoke of the first time she took Amelia to school and felt her heart understand the word responsibility. They were stories that sewed something from within, a bridge that is not inaugurated with a ribbon, but with silent steps. On Thursday, Amelia announced she would travel for 2 days to see her parents. The announcement fell between Scarlett and Victoria like a distant bell. There was no promise, only that suspension of possibilities that resembles the moment when a key touches a lock and decides whether to turn. The night before the departure, Amelia ordered pizza, put on a movie that all three liked, and fell asleep before halfway through. Scarlett turned down the volume, Victoria adjusted the blanket, and they stayed side by side on the sofa, their legs almost touching, sharing the calm breathing of the house. On the screen, two characters argued about whether it was possible to love without hurting. Neither of them commented on the coincidence. The movie ended. The bluish glow from the turned-off TV returned the room to its original state. Victoria got up, picked up her coat, took her time putting it on. Scarlett stood up too, not knowing where to put her arms. The distance between them again had the width of a step and the weight of a world. "Have a good trip with your parents," Scarlett said to Amelia, sleeping on the sofa, as if hanging the phrase in a safe place. "Thank you," Victoria replied for her, and let her gaze complete a stretch that her voice did not dare to traverse. Victoria's hand touched the doorknob, hesitated. The click of the metal seemed like a question. Scarlett inhaled, felt the woody perfume and the memory of the Ella vinyl, and then simply said, "If it rains tomorrow, will you show up?" Victoria neither smiled nor frowned. She merely nodded, a minimal gesture, almost invisible, that nonetheless ignited a gentle blaze inside Scarlett. The door opened a little, the street offered wind and drizzle. Victoria left, and the draft wandered through the room, moved the pages of the newspaper, insinuated that not every absence is a wall. Scarlett stood still, her heart steady like someone guarding the secret of a lighthouse. The hallway light turned on by sensor. On the doorframe, a trace of shadow outlined a return, and for a moment it was impossible to know if it was the end of the night, or the beginning of something else. It rained. Not the storm that empties streets, but the obstinate rain that dresses London in a wet and intimate clarity. Scarlett woke up before the alarm, as if her body had made a pact with the sky. She made coffee, opened the sliding window letting in the smell of the washed city and spent some time gazing at the neighboring roof, where puddles formed small archipelagos. Amelia had already left the previous night, a small suitcase, a hurried kiss, the usual message, "Take care." The house, now, seemed to be learning a new way of breathing. Victoria arrived late in the morning, the black umbrella closed like a secret. She carried a brown paper bag and a short smile of someone who doesn't know if they are entering a room or a photograph. The wool coat still held drops that clung to the fabric. Scarlett, in thick socks and a white t-shirt, felt the air temperature adjust to a promise. "Good morning," Victoria said, her voice low, as if also greeting the rain. "Good morning." "You kept your word," Scarlett raised an eyebrow. "Kept what?" "Show up when it rains." It was a joke, but the phrase fell between them like a mirror. Victoria averted her eyes, set the bag on the table, and began taking out ingredients that had the name of Sunday: tomatoes, basil, cheese, fresh pasta. A simple, honest lunch that required nothing but attention. Scarlett decided that cooking together could be the perfect way to postpone any decision that still had no name. The kitchen felt larger in the morning. The steam turned the glass into mist and the countertop gained smells of garlic and crushed leaves. Scarlett diced tomatoes, and the blade of the knife marked a rhythm her heart tried to follow. Victoria washed the basil with exaggerated care, removing folds of water like someone undoing a delicate knot. "You treat things as if they might break," said Scarlett, without provocation, only tenderness. "I treat things as if they matter," replied Victoria, and there was no irony, only a kind of truth that warmed. Scarlett's white t-shirt stuck a little to her body because of the steam, and the discreet neckline became an involuntary invitation to the wrong kind of attention. Victoria noticed and rehearsed. She looked away. Not completely. The awareness of both their gazes hung an electric wire in the air. Scarlett felt her own movements slow down, as if an invisible camera were filming her actions. She thought about putting on a jacket. She didn't. She remained in front of the stove, offering time what it asked for, more time. What if the pasta turns out wrong? Asked Scarlett, feigning fear. We learn to adjust the salt, Victoria replied, and the way she said, "we," sounded less like a recipe and more like a possibility. The sauce bubbled like a secret about to overflow. Scarlett approached to taste it, extended the spoon to Victoria. Her lips touched the edge of the utensil, and that was all, a shared edge of warmth, a banal gesture that the body read as a warning. Their eyes met in that tiny interval. Victoria took a step back, as if confirming she still knew how to retreat. Scarlett smiled, not in victory, but to say she understood the language. They had lunch with the radio low and chairs that scraped the floor in timid rhythms. They talked about old movies, the kind where people fall in love in train stations and time has a different kind of manners. The clinking of cutlery became the soundtrack. Scarlett noticed that on Victoria's face, attention always preceded any response, as if every word needed a home. When they finished, the leftover pasta was still steaming in the pot, and Sunday seemed to hang on a wall nail, firm, discreet, inevitable. Coffee? Offered Scarlett. If it's the kind that straightens out the day, Victoria nodded. Their hands touched when they went to get the cups from the high cabinet. It was quick, precise, a syllable. Victoria didn't pull away immediately, she let the touch inform her of the other's temperature. The silence didn't feel heavy. It was a silence that seemed to be choosing its words with patience. Scarlett felt the blood rush to her hands in a gentle shock. "You." Victoria began, and stopped. "Me?" Scarlett tried for lightness, but her voice came out deep. "You speak like someone who turns on lights in rooms I had forgotten." Scarlett laughed, surprised by the beauty of the phrase and by the fact that someone like Victoria would say it out loud. She wanted to respond with an image of equal measure, but couldn't find one. Instead, she opened the window and let the cold air in. The rain had thinned, now it was almost water dust. The street became a broken mirror. The sound of wheels on the cobblestones conversed with the metal of the sink. "Shall we go out for a bit?" suggested Scarlett, as if proposing a small act of courage. "Portobello is beautiful in this light." Victoria hesitated, not from lack of want, but from the habit of checking the map before walking. She ended up conceding with a brief nod. She changed her blouse, chose a blue-gray silk shirt that accentuated the line of her shoulders. The top button was left open, enough for her collarbone to converse with the afternoon. Scarlett pretended not to notice, but her pupil bore witness. They walked under the same umbrella, shoulder to shoulder, their bodies learning a new choreography without rehearsal. The shop windows reflected the two of them, and Scarlett realized how their image together seemed to have existed before it happened. In a corner bookstore, the warmth of the lamps and the scent of old pages created a shelter. Victoria pulled a book of love letters from the last century from the shelf. She read a passage in a low voice, conscious of the effect she herself was causing. "I write to you as one who holds the walls of the house against the wind." "I would live in that sentence," said Scarlett, without thinking. The bookseller coughed a polite warning that there were people, and that was enough to move them 2 steps apart. The street received them back with its usual politeness. They stopped at a flower stall. Victoria chose lavenders, and Scarlett thought that scent deserved a permanent place in her memory. A couple ran across the crosswalk, and the city continued, indifferent and perfect in its role as a backdrop. They returned before the end of the afternoon. The apartment was in the soft penumbra that precedes the lighting of the lamps. Scarlett put on the Ella record, now an unconfessed habit. Victoria, without her coat, let herself fall onto the sofa with the elegance of someone who always arrives whole to places. The silk shirt, vivid in its simplicity, seemed to have been sewn for that room. Scarlett sat on the arm of the sofa first, then on the rug, then closer, small displacements that told a story which the words, for now, preferred not to disturb. "If I ask you something, will you answer me with the truth?" said Scarlett, looking at her own hands. "That's the only way I know how." Victoria set her cup down, firm. Scarlett raised her eyes. The world fell silent, as if even the record player's needle was waiting. "Are you afraid of me?" It wasn't a provocation, it was a request for a map. Victoria breathed like someone turning her face to an essential wind. "I'm afraid of who I might be near you." The honesty shifted the axis of the room. Everything became a little sharper. There was no more room for games or escape phrases. Scarlett brought her knees closer to the sofa, and the distance between them became a measure of courage. Ella's music drew an outline in the air, and Scarlett's heart understood it was being heard. The light faded completely, and the amber lamps did their part. On the coffee table, the lavenders took on a deeper purple. Scarlett ran her fingers over the tips, like someone seeking a blessing before the leap. Victoria watched, body still, gaze vivid. The entire apartment was attentive. "I don't promise endings," Scarlett said, in a whisper. "I promise presence." "I don't know how to be half," replied Victoria, and it sounded like an oath. The clock read 6:42. The city knocked at the door with tires on water and people with shopping bags. Inside, time had a different ruler. Scarlett stood up, the rug softening her steps. She stopped in front of Victoria and, for the first time, let her posture say what her voice could not. The silk shirt outlined her collarbone like sacred geography. Victoria's gaze traveled from her lap to Scarlett's mouth, and from there to Scarlett's eyes, on a path that seemed rehearsed by destiny. "If I misjudged the distance," Scarlett began. "We learn to adjust the salt," Victoria returned, and something inside both of them ignited like a match. There was a pause, not long, just right, in which the entire path traveled fit wholly. The market corridor, the power that went out and came back, the pasta on Sunday, the phrases stored like pocket stones. It was in that window of a second that Scarlett reached out and touched, with her fingertips, the line of Victoria's jaw. It was not an invasive touch, it was recognition. The skin responded with a discreet warmth, as if in agreement. "I'm here," said Scarlett. "Me too," said Victoria. Then their faces drew closer. The umbrella leaning against the door, the lavender breathing, the Ella record spinning a song of promise. The last centimeter was a kind of flight, without noise, without fanfare, just the decision falling into the right place. And, when they finally met, there was no rush. It was a kiss that began in silence and, within it, brought all the words. The kiss was not an accident nor a moment's bravado, it was a decision that had taken whole chapters to mature. When their lips parted, Scarlett kept her forehead resting against Victoria's as if confirming if her own world still existed. The room, once large, had become a shell. Ella's music spun in the background, and the lavender on the table released a scent that seemed to say, quietly, that certain things had been written since the first rain. "I felt it would be like this," whispered Scarlett, as if afraid to scare the moment away. "I tried not to feel it," Victoria replied, her voice hoarse from little use in saying what mattered. No arrangement was necessary. Scarlett slid her hand along her arm, a slow, attentive gesture, like someone learning to read handwriting. The body responded with that warmth that doesn't ask for permission, it just appears. Victoria placed her hands on the sides of Scarlett's face and examined her for a second, the strands of hair stuck to her temple, the gentle startle at the corner of her mouth, the yellow light that made her green eyes ignite like wet glass. The second kiss came with more courage, but still without haste, it tasted of sweet tea, of a newly lit promise. Outside, cars blew water, and every passing headlight scratched the wall with a cinematic stroke. Scarlett smiled with her eyes, fingers still on Victoria's jaw, and guided her to the center of the room, where the rug made a soft shelter. The blue-gray silk shirt outlined the curve of her shoulders and left a collarbone exposed that seemed invented for the light of that hour. Scarlett stopped one step before, so the distance could also say its part. The air between them grew thick and sweet, a ripe fruit that parts at the touch. "I want to know your rhythm," said Scarlett. "The one of your truth." "I only know one, the one that doesn't hurt those I love." Victoria took a deep breath. "But today I won't hide from myself." Scarlett nodded. There were no tricks, no urgency to run over. There was the patient science that a whole body opens like a house when the right key turns without rush. Her hand rose, drew a path from shoulder to nape, and Victoria's skin responded with that pleasant shiver of someone who understands the language. The kiss started again slowly, deeper, and the lines of the world began to lose their contours. Walls, clocks, the very names of things. They stayed like that for a while, visiting the edges, repeating the route just to feel it better, like musicians tuning their instruments before a concert. Amelia wasn't there. That discreet fact bet silence in their favor. Scarlett led Victoria to the window. The city spilled over in reflections, and the cold glass accentuated the temperature of their hands. Victoria rested her forehead against the other side of the world, all of London compressed into a centimeter. Scarlett's breath hit her skin like a warm breeze. It was impossible not to want more. The shirt, by a whim of the top button, yielded to the touch. It didn't fall, it didn't open completely, it merely suggested. Scarlett followed the line of the collarbone with her fingertips, then with her mouth, a light kiss that said, "I see you," before saying anything else. Victoria closed her eyes, but did not retreat. Her hand found Scarlett's waist under the t-shirt, skin against skin, and the electric current that ran through both bodies had the courtesy to be slow. The room seemed to breathe with them, inflating and deflating. "I don't know where this leads us," Victoria confessed, without apology. "Maybe it's the first real place in a long time," said Scarlett, and there was a clean courage there, a kind of faith. They laughed small, a laugh that dusted off the fear. Then, as if conceding to the night the right to be night, Scarlett turned off the lamp, leaving only the candles. The apartment appeared in new layers, shadows dancing on the walls, the warm glow on the frames, the lavender taking on an almost living purple. Victoria held Scarlett's hand and guided her back to the rug. They sat facing each other, knees touching, the world reduced to an exact meeting of geometries. "Tell me who you were at 8 years old," requested Victoria, a smile on her lips, as if she wanted to know the map before the road. Scarlett thought quickly. A girl who ran with her shoelaces untied and always fell, but got up to run again. And at 15? The one who pretended to be brave so as not to be swallowed by people who shouted louder. "Now I understand," Victoria nodded, resting her forehead against Scarlett's again. "You learned early not to ask for permission. And that scares me and saves me." The conversation was the fabric from which the gestures were born. Scarlett kissed the corner of that smile, and then the line of the jaw, and then the curve behind the ear. Each point had the time it deserved. Victoria pulled Scarlett's t-shirt up by a margin, and her palm found the skin as if arriving home. There was no rush, there was revelation. The body, after all, was a whole vocabulary, and the two were learning the new syllables together. The rain thickened in a short burst, as if confirming the gravity of the moment. The song on the record player changed to a ballad that seemed stitched with copper threads. Scarlett guided Victoria to the hallway, light steps, and the pictures hanging on the left became landscapes from another era. They passed by Amelia's slightly open door with the reverence of someone crossing an old church, slowly, with respect, as if the simple passage were a promise made to the future. In Scarlett's room, the penumbra was soft and linear. Light curtains let the night be guessed, and a bedside lamp drew an island of light on the duvet. Victoria paused for a moment at the door, not from fear of what was to come, but to say without words that she knew what such a decision meant. Scarlett understood. She approached, held her face in her hands, and spoke in the way one speaks with things that matter. "We can stay here. Just here. Whatever will be in the right time. I don't want to lose myself," Victoria said. "I want to find myself with you." That was when the embrace happened fully. It wasn't a visitor's hug, it had the weight of home. One body adapted to the other as if the world had finally called back what was its own. The kiss came deeper, and the blood found rhythms that London doesn't teach on maps. Scarlett felt Victoria's hands travel with sure delicacy, mapping her back, learning postures, asking for passage with a care that, in itself, was already surrender. The air grew warm without rush. The clock on the shelf forgot to chime. Clothing became a negotiated boundary. Buttons understood the message and surrendered without snaps. The shirt's neckline drew a new truth in the mirror. The white t-shirt brought forth skin that the candles turned amber. But nothing was abrupt. Time opened, and within it everything fit, the quiet laugh when a strand of hair rebelled, the pause to ask, "Is this okay?" The nod in response, the eyes seeking each other to confirm the route. Consent, there, was a language of breath. Each advance had its question and its yes. The world outside the room could crumble and there would be no news. Their hands found paths that were once just theory, the curvature of the lower back, the shape of the shoulder, the skin that prickled like a wheat field in the wind. The touch grew more confident, the music finer, the heart fuller. There was no rush to get anywhere because, in a way, they had already arrived. The rest was just learning to inhabit. Scarlett realized, with a grateful surprise, that it wasn't just desire moving them, it was a recognition of belonging, as if life had insisted for too long on interrupting them and, now, returned the minutes with interest. Victoria, in turn, saw her own discipline yield to care, and, surrendered, discovered there was freedom in that, the conscious choice to allow herself. And the night, a patient witness, walked a few steps with them. At a certain point, the candles diminished as if breathing shorter. Scarlett gathered them on a metal tray. The glow reflected the two of them in layers, shadows, laughter, eyes that spoke. It wasn't a picture of perfection, it was a living picture. Victoria ran her hand through Scarlett's hair, moving it away from her face, and said, with relentless sincerity, "Thank you for not rushing me." "Thank you for staying," Scarlett replied. The bed, more an invitation than a destination, received them with the low rustle of the sheets. They lay side by side for a moment, hands held, looking at the ceiling as if it were a portable sky. Scarlett recounted, almost in a whisper, her old fear of being too much, of overflowing and causing damage. Victoria confessed her terror of being too little, of holding on so tight the other couldn't fit. And it was in that fine adjustment, that point where confessions embrace, that the world's engine room seemed to change place. The night slid 6 degrees inward. The city outside became a distant film. Their hands recognized each other even more, their mouths found new paths, their breathing found a common rhythm. It was the beginning of something larger than they knew how to name. There were no words to describe it, there was the decision to continue. When the candlelight flickered, it wasn't a warning, it was a blessing. And before what came next was said by the whole body, Scarlett left one last gesture suspended, the kind of gesture that lights the path and waits for the other side to confirm. Victoria, with a calm and lit gaze, confirmed. The bedroom door closed slowly, without a sound, and the click of the latch sounded like the exact punctuation of a long-written sentence. The rest of what the night held would begin there. The next morning was born with a different kind of light, the kind that doesn't invade, but only suggests itself through the gaps in the curtains, as if respecting what the night had guarded. Scarlett opened her eyes before the alarm and, for a moment, thought she was still dreaming. Victoria slept beside her, her face serene, her hair loose in soft waves that contrasted with the white sheet. There was something almost sacred about seeing her like this, stripped of rigidity and ready answers, breathing lightly, surrendered to silence. Scarlett watched her chest rise and fall, and felt a shiver of tenderness run down her spine. It wasn't just desire, it was a feeling of encounter, the deep recognition that something inside her had finally found rest. The distant sound of the rain, lighter now, seemed to seal the invisible pact between them. Scarlett reached out and traced an imaginary path along Victoria's shoulder, a minimal touch that said, "I'm here," without needing words. She stirred, opened her eyes slowly, and for a second, their two worlds aligned. There was a beautiful silence there, not the kind that weighs, but the kind that welcomes. "Do you always wake up first?" asked Victoria, her voice hoarse, still belonging to the night. "Only when the dream is too good to end," replied Scarlett, smiling. Victoria closed her eyes, sighed a contained laugh, and pressed her face into the pillow. The simple, almost lazy gesture reminded Scarlett why she had been so attracted to her from the start. It wasn't about appearance, although Victoria was the very definition of elegance in the flesh. It was about the way she controlled herself all the time, as if the world only existed if she held it firm, and, for the first time, Scarlett saw her loose, disarmed, human. The morning advanced slowly, as if the clock had understood that this moment needed no rush. They had coffee in bed, laughed at the crumbs on the sheet, shared the newspaper without reading any news to the end. Scarlett felt a contentment she couldn't describe, a rare peace, as if the universe had stopped fighting with her for a few minutes. But deep down, a shadow of reality began to take shape on the horizon. Amelia. The world outside that room still existed. Victoria noticed Scarlett's distant gaze and set her mug on the bedside table. "What is it?" "Nothing. I just thought about how everything seems easy in here, and impossible out there." "It's not impossible," said Victoria, serene. "It's just costly." Scarlett understood. Costly, not in the financial sense, but the emotional one. They knew what was at stake: Amelia's friendship, certainties, the image Victoria had spent years building. Still, there was a painful clarity in her voice. Love, even the most improbable, demands courage. The day continued with small rituals. They showered in silence, sharing the space like people rediscovering each other through the simplest gestures: the steam, the smell of soap, the sound of drops running on the tiles. They dressed slowly, as if each piece of clothing were an attempt to become normal again. Scarlett chose a white button-down shirt, Victoria, a beige sweater and tailored trousers. For a moment, they looked like two strangers in the same mirror. The rain stopped near noon, and the city awoke with a glow of early spring. They walked through Notting Hill, as they always did, but now everything seemed different. The colorful streets, the sound of footsteps, the smell of warm bread from the bakeries, everything seemed amplified, as if the world had discovered a new way to exist. Scarlett wanted to keep that day in a bottle, like perfume. On the way back, they stopped at a cafe. The place was small, tucked between two old shops. They sat at the corner table, near the window, and the reflection in the glass drew a portrait of them that Scarlett would have framed if she could. Victoria looked outside, distracted, her chin resting on her hand, and Scarlett realized how at home she felt beside her, not from comfort, but from truth. "Are you going to tell Amelia?" Scarlett asked, finally. Victoria looked away from the glass, found her eyes, and hesitated for a moment. "I don't know. I don't want to lie to her, but I also don't want to hurt her. Maybe hiding it hurts more. Or maybe the truth, told at the wrong time, destroys everything that could still be beautiful." Scarlett fell silent. There was wisdom in those words, but also an inevitable pain. Loving Victoria was like walking barefoot on smooth stones, beautiful and dangerous, a balance between surrender and wounding. Still, she didn't want to go back. Neither of them did. That night, back in the apartment, the silent tension occupied the air again. Scarlett felt the fear growing alongside the love, and it confused her. Victoria was sitting on the sofa, reading a book she didn't seem to truly be reading. Music played softly, an instrumental melody that seemed made for movie endings that never end. Scarlett approached slowly, sat beside her, and let the silence say what needed to be said. "I don't know what happens from here on out," Scarlett began. "But I know I've never lived anything that felt so right. Even when everything screams the opposite." Victoria closed the book, set it on the table, and turned her body towards her. "Sometimes, the right things come at the wrong time." She took a long pause. "But if they're real, they find their way back." The words echoed in the air, mixed with the sound of the returning rain, thin, persistent, like everything that insists on remaining. Scarlett rested her head on Victoria's shoulder, and Victoria ran her fingers through the damp strands of her hair. The feeling was of a truce, even if the world outside didn't yet understand. They had found each other. And, in that instant, that was enough. The early hours arrived with the same scent as the previous night, lavender, warm skin, and a calm that only true love knows how to bring. They lay down again, not as an escape, but as a reunion. The touch was the same, but now it carried something more, the recognition that, however uncertain the future, what they had was real. Each look, each gesture, each shared breath seemed to say, it was worth it. Before falling asleep, Scarlett thought about everything she had learned. That love doesn't need to be declared loudly to exist, that sometimes it reveals itself in the smallest gestures, sustained gaze, a hand that doesn't let go, a silence that understands. That true love isn't about perfection, but about courage, the courage to stay, even when it's easier to leave. When the sun finally rose, London seemed lighter. Victoria got up first and made coffee. Scarlett watched her from the bed, her heart full of something new. It wasn't euphoria, nor fear, it was gratitude. The certainty that, whatever happened, none of it would be lost. Love isn't measured in time, but in presence. Before leaving, Victoria approached, knelt by the bed, and held Scarlett's hand. "If I don't know how to come back, meet me in the rain," she said, smiling with her eyes. "I will," replied Scarlett. "Always." And so, she left, leaving behind the perfume, the memory, and an unspoken promise, that, somehow, love would find a way to continue. Some encounters change everything, not because they last forever, but because they show us who we are when we love without fear. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the Secret Garden Stories channel, leave a comment saying what you felt, and share it with those who believe that true love always finds its way back.